But I want to get to the hand where I feel like I had this blunder and sort of this bad logic. And this was against Nick Vertucci. So this came at about 3 hours and 14 minutes into the show, which was probably about maybe like halfway into the show, something like that. And I was up 6,000. I think at one time I might have been up like 9 or 10, but at this point I'm up 6,000. So I'm sitting there with 31,000, and the straddle is on and it's mandatory now. So I said, like, the last hand the guy opened a 325 off of just 25.50. So when it wasn't straddle, people were actually opening smaller, but now we were almost always playing the 100 on, and we were doing like rounds of it, and then we basically kept it on permanently. So in this spot, I'm +1, and I pick up Queen of Hearts, Queen of Clubs. So I go to 300 from +1 with Queen of Hearts, Queen of Clubs. Nick Vertucci in the hijack, who covers me to my immediate left, he 3-bets to 1,000. So he 3-bets to 1,000, gets back over to the other Asian guy from New York who has 38,000. So he has me covered. And again, I mean, we can look at this like it's really like a 300 big blind scenario here because it's 100 on the straddle. And this dude cold 4-bets here. So we're going to see a cold 4-bet here again from the middle blind, and he goes to 3,500. So I open to 300. Nick 3-bets to 1,000. Nick is 3-betting me, by the way. Remember, Nick is probably the biggest winner on Hustler Casino Live besides Garrett, and that is a function of him playing in almost every single non-Friday game, but he plays very, very tight aggressive, which would just going to absolutely print in this game. The straddle folds in its background to me. I couldn't believe some of the I don't know, it doesn't surprise me, right? Like the YouTube comments. People are like, this is a 5-bet or fold. I mean, why would I can't even imagine folding queen here unless it is the most extreme type of scenario. Remember, I mean, obviously Nick could 4-bet me. I just think that this would be way, way too nitty. I'm going to just fold queens to a cold 4-bet here from the middle blind. I mean, I know it's a tight configuration. So if I'm not going to fold, why is it always a 5-bet, especially at this stack depth? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, obviously, almost every single hold'em hand is usually going to be easier to play heads up. But at a certain point, you know, you are putting your stack at risk. Now, I can see playing a 5-bet here because there's definitely enough money, you know, to fold, but I'm not overly concerned necessarily with Nick coming in behind, although he is going to get a pretty good price though, too. But I would not agree that this is a 5-bet or fold like some doofuses in the YouTube chat were saying, right? So this guy goes to 3,500, and I'm like, okay, this is the second time I'm getting cold 4-bet when I have a big pocket pair. I call, right? I mean, what else really is there to do? I guess I could 5-bet, but I make the call. It's 3,200 more for me, so I call. And Nick, by the way, in terms of a price, once this guy goes 3,500 and I call, the pot is like 81 and change, and it's only 2,500 for him to call. He's getting over 3-1. So there's a very, very good chance that he's going to call. And even though he does do some light 3-betting, this is somewhat of an early configuration. I would have been very, very surprised if Nick would have 3-bet me +1 versus hijack had this happen and then folded, getting 3.5 to 1. I mean, he would have had to have absolute garbage. And I just haven't really seen that much from him. He seems to construct his 3-bets, unless it's like late versus late, with pretty good hands in the sense that hands that he's going to be able to defend down like a lot, like a direct suited connector, an actual value hand. Because even if he 3-bet me with 9s here, I think he's going to call, right, in this spot. So he makes the call, and now we are in a 4-bet pot 3 ways. So we're in a 4-bet pot 3 ways, and the pot is 10,600. And the board comes out king, 7, 6, all spades. I've got queen of hearts, queen of clubs. So I do not have a spade here in my hand. Now, if the pre-flop 4-better came out and bet, there is absolutely no way that I would be able to continue. And this is why it's easier to play hands heads up, right? Because if I didn't have Nick behind me, depending on the sizing, I think that I probably would be forced to continue even without a spade. But in a multi-way pot, looking at a king out there plus a monotone spade board, and I don't have a spade, there's no way I can continue with Nick behind me. But that does not happen. The pre-flop 4-better checks. Now, usually somebody who 4-bets, although I don't know if this applies to multi-way pots because they're so rare, like a multi-way 4-bet pot. But usually in 4-bet pots, you can do a ton of c-betting, unless it's like almost the worst board. Maybe this board might be checked a fair amount because it's a monotone board, but you do a lot of c-betting as the 4-better. Again, this is multi-way and it's monotone. So this dude checks after 4-betting. Again, the pot is like 10-6, right? So he checks, I check, and it gets over to Nick, and Nick bets 3,000. Now the pre-flop 4-better folds. Doesn't think about it too long, and he folds. And obviously this is sort of my first decision point here. And in this one, I was really, really on the fence with this one because I was like, oh man, at first I was like, man, this feels really, really dirty to fold here, for a 1/3 pot size bet, and I'm getting 4-1. I think that sometimes people definitely do overfold on monotone boards, but I think that this is actually my first mistake because Nick's range when he 3-bets me early versus early is way more defined than a lot of these guys that can be out to lunch in left field. It's not a bad thing, but the way that he's constructing is fairly good hands. And when I think about what he bets here in this scenario, remember it's a 4-bet pot and he overcalled, it is going to be a king, sometimes for protection, and maybe some ace of spades types of hands. And then I convinced myself, well, what if he had like 10s or jacks with a spade? And a couple of logic flaws here looking back at this. First of all, I don't think he's betting 10s or jacks with the spade all that much. I think the more glaring logic problem, though, and I've talked about this, I know, on previous bits of content, is that if I'm hoping that he has the ace of spades in his hand, it's probably mostly all ace king. Sometimes he might have ace queen off, but I've got 2 queens in my hand and I don't have the queen of spades. So if he's like, I guess it's just like, it's asking a lot for him. First of all, he's got to 3-bet me with ace queen off. He's got to call the 4-bet, and then he has to bet the flop. I'm talking about ace queen with the queen of spades here. I think, very well he might bet ace queen with the ace of spades, but I just don't know how often that happens. So you couple that with where he's probably not stabbing all that much with like 10s or jacks with a spade or queens with a spade, the other 2 queens, and his primary offsuit ace hand is ace king. I think this probably just is a fold. So I think that that's really where my first mistake lies. I should just fold on the flop. But I did not do that. That didn't happen. I got caught up with the whole thing from last time I was there when I probably should have folded ace 5 of diamonds, right? Pre-flop. I don't know if I'm still getting caught up in this whole thing, with trying to give action or something like that. But I made the call when in fact I think it probably should be a fold even to a 1/3 sizing. So I call, and now the pot is 16,600. The turn is what I think is an absolute terrible card for me. It's the ace of hearts. The reason why I think that that's a terrible card for me is because if he was ever betting like the ace of spades on the flop, like if he had like ace queen, I never think he really has ace jack, then now I'm losing to that too because the ace is paired. But this is also too where I think I had a little bit of logic flaw, and I'll go back to this at the end of the hand. So I was just done with it. Like if he was going to bet, I was going to be done with it. So I check, and I was like, fuck, maybe I should have folded, earlier. So I check, but he checks behind pretty quickly. So it goes check, check. He checks behind. 16,600 to the river, and the river rolls off the deuce of spades for a final board of king 7-6, all spades, turns to ace of hearts, and now the river is the deuce of spades. So now there is literally no way I can win. Like just no way that I can possibly win. I cannot see a scenario where I ever have the best hand here given this action, because if he was sort of sticking his nose out once in a great while with like jacks with the jack of spades, something like that, that is now a flush. Now, what I got sort of caught up with here was two hands. I don't know why I did this to myself. I was like, well, there's no way I can win, but that is not necessarily an excuse to bet. I always talk about that. People are like, well, you have no showdown value, you have to bet. Not always. But even though, if he were to check back like the ace of spades, that is the one card nut now, for some reason I had it in my head, I was like, well, maybe I can get him off of ace king. I mean, ace king is probably played in this manner up until the turn. Like, he has a lot of ace king here some of the time. That's one of the hands that he might be betting out with on the flop. And I was like, well, maybe if I bet here, and it doesn't have to be a large bet, he's going to make a hero fold here, with ace king. The problem with that, of course, though, is he really checking ace king on the turn? Again, it's king 7-6 all spades and the turn is an ace. Maybe the only ace king that he might be checking would be ace king off with the ace of spades if he thought that I was like sandbagging him for some reason. And of course, that hand now makes the nut flush. The other hand that I thought was, well, what if he has a king? What if he has a king here and he doesn't have a spade, right? He has a king and he doesn't have a spade. I can't win. I'm not beating like king jack suited here, right? So I would say that the issue with that is the fact that I have two queens in my hand, and probably the suited kings that he always 3-bets and calls a 4-bet with would be king queen suited. So I've got the queen of hearts and the queen of clubs in my hand. He can't have king queen of spades because the king of spades is out there. So that only leaves one combo, which is king queen of diamonds. Only one combo of king queen. Now, could he have like other suited king? Could he have like king jack? Could he have king 10? Possibly. I mean, there are 3 of each of those. If he 3-bets king jack suited, right? You've got king jack of clubs, king jack of hearts, king jack of diamonds, and king 10 suited. So liberally, maybe he's got like 7, at the most 7 combos of kings, but really like maybe he folds some of that shit out. Really, I have one of the worst hands to try to bluff a king off because I think king queen suited is always taken this way. So it's not a great combo looking back at this. But at the time, like I said, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I was like, well, maybe he's got ace king and he'll fold. And then looking back at this, I just think he bets ace king a lot without a spade. And I was like, well, I got to bluff a king just in case he's got a king here. Because when he checked back the turn, I was like, okay, now I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, he could have the ace of spades here, but he just doesn't have that many offsuit aces, which kind of brings back to like the whole logic thing on the flop, because if I don't think he's betting out that much with jacks, with the jack of spades or the other 2 queens, then what is he betting? Because he doesn't have many offsuit aces, right? So that was what I was thinking. I was like, there's no way I can win here. I was like, I don't have to bet like super, super large. I don't have to take a crazy sizing. And with this pot being 16,000, I decided to go like 6,300, which is, maybe 40% of the pot. Maybe I can get away with a little bit smaller, like 5,000, but I didn't want to like make it so small. This is 35, 40% of the pot. I didn't want to make it so small that he might hero call with ace king, because that would be a disaster if he doesn't fold ace king here. I mean, if he had ace king, no spade here on king 7-6, all spades, turns the ace of hearts, rivers a spade, and I bet at the end, boy, that's a really, really difficult call for him to make. I mean, I would literally have to be turning something into a bluff, like my hand, right? So I'm like, please fold. Please fold. Please just have a king. Once in a while, have ace king, something like that. But that did not happen. He moved all in. So obviously, I snap folded, and he tables ace jack of spades. So he flopped the nuts. He flopped the nuts, bet the flop multi-way, and then checked back the turn, which was actually quite a good play. And especially when he has the ace of spades in his hand. Now, maybe I do have some ace king that would continue on the turn that he's maybe losing some value from. But obviously, I would have folded on the turn. But he bet flop and he checked back the turn. Now, I guess he was just trying to get value from like the queen of spades. And then afterwards, he's like, what would you have done with the queen of spades, Bart? Now, let's say, for example, instead of having offsuit queen here, 2 offsuit queens, I actually had the queen of spades. And I played the hand the same way. King 7-6 all spades. Let's say I got 2 black queens. Check call the flop, turns an ace, and now the river's a 4th spade. Would I bet for value And what would I do if I got raised? Well, I'll tell you, if I bet for value and I got raised, I would snap fold. This is, and people, how can you fold? I don't know if you remember the call-in show from a few months ago where I think the thumbnail was like, "Are you insane?" or something like that, where the guy like called, he had like, it was a similar run out on a 4-flush board and he like called like a jam with like the second nut. The reason why these boards on 4-flush runouts are so underbluffed is because either player can have the nuts. So if I'm betting here with queens with the queen of spades, which is the second nuts on king 7-6, turns an ace, rivers the deuce of spades, he's not going to stick his neck out and commit his entire stack when if he doesn't have the ace of spades, I can have the ace of spades. So I really don't think that it would have been a hard fold for me. Now, I think the question just becomes like, is it too thin to bet here? And what are you trying to get called by in this particular spot? Especially if I'm saying I was trying to fold ace king, no spade. What am I trying to get called by here? And going back to, if he's not betting like jacks with the jack of spades and I'm betting queens with the queen of spades, what spade does he have to call with, right? So I think that was kind of interesting, but I think on the flop is a fold. So I made like a $3,000 mistake compounded on the river by a bluff that was probably unwarranted, and it cost me $9,300. Just that one hand cost me $9,300.